Yes, you do. Don't nod your head, because you do. And in your documentation, the one this evening, Lower Thames Crossing Route Consultation 2006, on your page 22, which you didn't show on the slide, it actually shows Route 3, option C, 4.3 billion to 5.9 billion. So if you go back to one of the previous options, option A14, that was estimated at 6.6 billion, which is the higher end. But even if you divide that in two, which is, if you like, a world model, gives you, and I'm being generous here, 3.3 billion. That is still 1 billion less than your lowest estimation on Route 3. Thank you very much.
It's clear to me there's a wee bit of confusion about these costs we're using, so let me just explain that. So, at this stage of a project's development, you can't be absolutely certain about the cost. Of course you can't, because it's going to be, you know, if we build this proposal against our plans, it will be open in 9 years' time. So, you know, I can't say here exactly how much that is going to cost. So, of course, the costs we've got are ranges of cost. So, the Route 3 proposal we talked to in our documents, the 4.3 billion figure, is what we call the most likely cost. The 5.9 billion is what we see as the extreme in terms of the higher figure it might get to should certain risks materialise and so on and so forth. Now the 4.3 is directly comparable to the 6.6 billion that Vic mentioned as regards those tunnels A8 and A14, those ideas. So long tunnels at Dartford, yes, we did look at those proposals. They were twice as expensive as the A1, Route 1 option that I talked to in my presentation. To deliver those projects would require 2 billion more than we're currently suggesting to government is necessary.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to take one, and I'm going to take it completely at random. There's a lady right in the corner over there. Yes, madam.
Hello, Katie Hanks from Higham. I've sent you a couple of emails and you've got my name on every time. Just to say there's a couple of points I'd like to make. The first is that we have spent years with the Dartford crossing with tolls. After it had become profitable, you still kept the tolls in. You've only just taken them out, the roadworks have only just been completed, and yet already you're saying that's not going to do the trick. First question, why did it take you so long to take them out in the first place when that place has been a problem for years? Second question, why haven't you given it a chance to see how the removal of the tolls affects the traffic before you start planning this? And third question, listening to all of your points that you've just made about financing, what you're really saying is that essentially the government doesn't care enough about the health of the people in Dartford or the people in this area to spend a bit more on a tunnel that would actually alleviate the problem and reduce pollution for the entire area, not just in Higham.
Thank you, Katie. Clearly, I can't talk for the decision the government may make. What I can talk to, though, picking up your points about the tolls and so on and forth, the charges at Dartford. In my earlier remarks, I think I remarked that the traffic volumes at Dartford are forecast to grow if we don't have any investment there. Now, with that growth of forecast against the capacity of the road, the congestion is only going to get worse. The free-flow charging mechanisms that we installed a few years ago were only ever seen as a short-term fix to try and improve the flow. In themselves, they don't improve capacity at all. Capacity is limited by the number of lanes in each direction. So that's why we're working now to have a new road in place in 10 years' time to address the volumes of traffic that we anticipate having at that stage. We must recognise that, you know, we can sit here and think about what today's condition is like. The bottom line is, in 9 years' time, we think the condition would be quite different. And why am I saying that? Because Ebbsfleet Development Corporation have got plans to deliver 15,500 homes. They want those to be built out by 2022, from a meeting I went to the other day. All these housing developments, all these other business developments will put strain on road networks. We have, as Highways England, have got a duty to manage that network as best we can with available funds to such that traffic keeps moving. The best thing you can do to address public health concerns for those people who live adjacent to roads is keep the traffic moving. The last thing you should do is let it stand in a traffic jam. That's what we've got at Dartford quite often, and that's what we've got to address.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take another one from the floor, and I can see right at the back is Brian Sweetland. Do you have a question, Brian?
Thank you very much. Good evening again, Martin. I'd like to talk about the potential health issues, because if the crossing here produces even a third of the health issues that the Dartford crossing produces, then, you know, that's going to affect children that aren't born yet, 10, 12, 15 years' time. And you've done a lot of projections with regards to traffic flows and everything else. I'd like to know what information you've gleaned on health issues, potential health risks, and have you actually had any discussions with the Public Health Authority in Kent, which is Kent County Council, and if you've had any discussions with them on the potential health risks, would you share with us what you've concluded?
Okay, thank you. All I can say to that really is that we do our designs to exacting standards. There are standards we work to in terms that are governed by health bodies as to the levels of pollution we should seek not to exceed. Now, clearly, local authorities have met with them in the last 18 months or so to take forward our proposals. Local authorities have a duty, clearly, to measure air quality in their areas. We're working with them to understand what those air quality management areas are and where their pressure points are. But we recognise from the volumes of traffic that we're predicting and the nature of the traffic fleet, not only today, but what it's predicted to become in 10, 20 years' time, and these are all against exacting standards that are set by others. We anticipate from our modelling work that there won't be an exceedance in terms of the pollution level adjacent to the road.
Well, can I just ask you then, have you had any discussions at all with the Public Health Authority, which is KCC in Kent, any discussions at all about public health and the problems that may arise from this road? Have you discussed with them at all?
Well, as I say, we have generally discussed with local authorities around those pollution levels that they monitor and so on their networks. They're all monitored and reported against exacting standards that are set by health bodies.
That's not the answer, Martin.
That's a politician's answer, not a real answer.
Thank you very much for that. There's been a lady right up in the corner that's been trying to attract my attention for a very long time.
My name's Amy McDonald. I live in Higham. My question is, why haven't we also worked with people like Network Rail to reduce the amount of cars? What's the point of putting an extra tunnel in when we actually need to stop the amount of cars on the road and encourage people to use public transport? Why don't Dartford Crossing stick in the train line? Problem solved. Would it not make sense? You can even share the costs. They will have to supply some of the money to build it.
Network Rail bring all their
Department for Transport led on. Yes, they did look at other modes of transport. Yes, they did consider if a rail crossing would be appropriate. They concluded there wasn't an economic case to provide such a
Can I stop
provision.
one question? How can it not be an economic case? If people are going to drive over there, they're going to go over there for work, so therefore they can use the train. If you want us to use the train to get to London, why can't we use the train to get to Essex? Would that not just be common sense?
So as I said, the department did look at rail provision and concluded that it wasn't viable.
I'm going to take another one of those submitted questions now. It's Catherine Holcroft. Catherine, there you are. Alan, right down here.
Hello, good morning again. As the UK is not on track to meet its carbon emission targets for 2023 to 2027, why are we considering a proposal that reverts back to an old, unsustainable method of building new roads in areas of outstanding natural beauty, when we should be looking for smarter, more innovative ways of dealing with the problems at Dartford and UK transport issues?
Okay, thank you for that. That's, I guess, a slightly wider question than the brief I've got from government. You know, government are doing things clearly to address environmental matters. They are working with car manufacturers and so on to produce ever more greener transport. Clearly, as you know, there's government subsidy for hybrid cars and such like. But you know, the fundamental thing that we've got to address, and what I think we're forgetting, is there is a significant pollution concern at Dartford today. We need to look to address that problem, and having a continuance of traffic just standing at the crossing day in, day out isn't the thing to do.
Okay, still keeping, coming back to people on the floor in a little while again. Valrina. Yes, there you are. I think you have a question.
Come for it, pal.
We were at Gravesend meeting when you talked and heard your statements such as, I refer you back, the Secretary of State and our modelling and other such non-answers. Has not a final decision really been made and you are just going through the pretense of a public consultation?
Thank you, Val. I'm sorry people might think the decision's been made. I can categorically tell you it hasn't. The decision that the government have made is they want something to be done about Dartford Crossing. That's why the Lower Thames Crossing is listed as a project to take forward in their road investment strategy during this parliamentary session. So yes, the government want us to do something with it, but we haven't decided on C, madam. We have, understandably, in starting this consultation and bringing things to the consultation, we've deliberately been quite transparent in sharing with you the facts and figures around the different options we looked at, and the option we think as Highways England is the better option. That doesn't mean to say that of all those options we're consulting over, that they're not all viable. Of course they're viable. And in that sense, it's important to get feedback from you all, and that will help the government ultimately make a decision over which route.
I think it's fair to say, I think it's fair to say that we have it on good authority, the authority of both the Roads Minister and the Secretary of State for Transport, that he has not made a decision in this matter, and indeed he has actually said on the record that option A is still on the table.
Yes, and the following day on Facebook,
Now going to...
announced that it wasn't on the table.
Well, I'm sorry, but I've given the facts. Carol Ruff, you're still here. Yes, you've got another question, I think, and then I'll come to the floor.
Where are you, Carol?
Hello, much shorter question this time. What steps would be taken to protect endangered species such as the hazel dormouse and great-crested newt that are known to inhabit the ancient woodlands around Shoreham Common?
So that's, thank you, that's an easy question. So we work to exacting environmental standards. So if the next decision, if the government choose to continue with this crossing, is obviously a declaration of the preferred route. At that point, we'd undertake physical environmental surveys on the route, and obviously take due account of any protected species in developing our proposals going forward. So I can categorically assure you that we would comply with all the legislative matters around such things.
I think, there we are. It's interesting that we talk about things such as, you know, the dormouse and crested newt and so on. Has anybody actually considered looking for something which is found on the Thames estuary around Orkney, which goes by the lovely title of the tentacled lungworm? It does exist in North Crete and not many other places, but you could always transport some down, I'm sure. Right. Now, Christine. Yeah.
I'm no President Christine. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm a Higham resident. My name's Christine. I've been making a few notes while we've been discussing this. One of them is we do, and we are told we have to look to the future. I feel that option C is only a very short-term solution. And once we become an urban sprawl, just like Dartford, we'll have to look for another alternative again in the future. So why not spend the money now and invest in a good solution, which could be a tunnel, as we were discussing earlier on. Otherwise, 20 years, 30 years down the line, we'll be looking for something else. Other than that, once again, let's look at the freight and the trains. Let's look at the freight on the ocean waves. Why aren't we using? We are on an island, we're surrounded by water, we've got lots of ports. Why don't we go and use them and give the work and the infrastructure to places that need it? And we don't need it. Another point is I've looked in the book, and I think it's on page 8, and it says that they're looking at proposals for 2 new crossings in London. Why aren't they being built? Why not put them in first, and then look at what's going to happen to us? It's, you know, Silvertown and Beaconsfield or somewhere else. Why not use those? Thirdly, we've all been on holiday. We've looked at holiday brochures at artists' impression of hotels. Now we're told, look at an artist's impression in the consultation document. Sorry, it doesn't make sense to me.
So I was fortunate enough to be in Sean Village Hall the other evening for a debate with BBC Kent. Those of you who might have caught that last night on the radio, Natalie Chapman from the Freight Transport Association was there and did take a number of questions about rail freight and so on and so forth. The point she was making is she represents Freight Transport Association, people who need to move stuff around the country from the continent. that she wasn't representing a road haulier companies, she was looking at freight generally. The bottom line is that at the moment, the marketplace dictates how stuff is moved about. Basically, you and I want cheap products. So what does that mean? It means people shift product the cheapest possible way. Now, charges to get onto the railways are significant. That mean for most journeys, that isn't a viable option. That's all to do with how the rail companies charge for using their network for such trains. So in a free market as we operate in, with shipping and road haulage and rail freights and so on, the thing that governs how stuff goes about is the cost. And sadly, most of that cost promotes road haulage.
If the government subsidised the rail travel, then you wouldn't have to build a road.
So
And it's not protected now,
sorry, just picking up on your other point about the London proposals for crossings. Yes, we are working with Transport for London. We've integrated our traffic model with theirs. They've got plans to build other crossings of the Thames clearly downstream of Blackwall. They're largely, their proposals are largely to cater for urban movement within the London conurbation. They would draw little, they would clearly, if they were built, particularly the Belvedere crossing, it would draw some traffic from Dartford, but not in significant numbers to mean that we wouldn't have to address the Dartford problem ourselves. Think of London as a city with one bridge crossing the Thames. That's in fact what we've got for the strategic network in this country, in Dartford Crossing. All those strategic movements, whether it be salmon from the fish farms in Scotland going to markets in Europe, or people living in Gravesend and work in Thurrock, it caters for all those sorts of movements. Everything funnels to one place. So when there's a problem, if there's a problem, all those other roads also become significantly congested. The A2, the A13. Those roads will see some relief should a sea crossing be built. It's about making a viable network. We haven't got one at the moment with the sole crossing at Dartford.
Now, time is getting on, so I'm going to have to cut things a little bit short. There's a lady over there, then a gentleman over there, and then we'll see how the time is going, but we will need to find out. So if you can keep the question as short as possible.
Well, mine's more of an invitation, actually. I'm Hayley, I'm from Stepford Close in Higher. When you was drawing all these pretty lines on these very white maps and not realising how much greenery we had around here, have you actually taken a nice walk along where you're planning to plough through our Greenland? There's one going on tomorrow at 2:30. If you'd like to come back here and walk through where you're going to stick lots of cars and ruin my children's air, and you know, Sean's school, where you're going to run a motorway down the back of it. I'm sure Robin Ball, who's going to take these lovely people to walk through there, would gladly show you where you want to put this motorway and upset everyone. You know, so yeah, mine was more of an invitation. I'm sure you're very busy tomorrow, but it would be quite nice if you take the opportunity.
There are very special walks over the marshes around here. I frequently do them, and it is a lovely area. There's a gentleman over there. That was my suggestion.
My name's Ken Bowman. I'm a chartered civil engineer and a chartered structural engineer.
Can you wait for the microphone? And if you could keep your question as short as possible.
Well, I don't think I'll bother to talk.
Well, time is
I'm a chartered civil and structural engineer. I live in Chatham. I've only taken interest in this project the last 3 weeks, but I've written a paper, Dartford Crossing, the correct solution, but it's got a question mark after it. Because, quite frankly, option C is a non-runner. It's not a solution to the problem at Dartford at all. Their own figures demonstrate that. It's not a solution. The second option, which they consider as solution A1, the gentleman here described why that wouldn't work, and I think that's correct. So what is the true, correct solution? Well, this gentleman here was on the right line. The correct solution is a tunnel from Ainsford, which is south of the A2, to South Ockenden. Now, when that was suggested, he suggested it, and it was rather rubbish, because in fact, previously, he talked about 15-mile-long road. I think he said something like that. And he rubbished this one on the grounds he said it couldn't be afforded, because in their documents they say that it would cost twice the value of scheme A1. I'll just pardon me. I've done a bar chart here on my paper. You can probably just see it. You can detect that the big red line at the right hand, at this side, or that side, is his costing. You see those two little ones? They're my costing. And the blue one in the middle, of course, is C. When this gentleman mentioned the tunnel in Holland under the West Scheldt, they built this tunnel in 2003. It's 6.6 kilometres long. And our tunnel that we require is nothing like 50 metres. It's about 6 miles. That's about 10 kilometres. Now this tunnel in Holland, which is 6.6 kilometres long, is a proper tunnel. It's on their motorway system. They claim it to be the deepest underwater tunnel in the world. And in 2003, it cost €720. Now, transferring euros into pounds is tricky because the rates go up and down. But if I take €720 and I multiply it by 3/4, I get £540. Our tunnel is half as long again. I add on half, £810 million. I add on 50% for inflation, and I get £1.2 billion. That's about third of a quarter of option C. Now, option C will only take 14% of the traffic that wants to go over the Dartford crossing to this new crossing. A tunnel, 2-lane tunnel, bored, as I suggest, 2 lanes each way, will take more like 30%. I heard at a previous deposition this gentleman give the figure of 30%. I've not seen it anywhere, but I heard him say it. So if this tunnel will be twice as effective as option C, that's a good point. If it turns out to be a quarter of the cost, well, that's a good point, isn't it?
Can I ask you to wind up, please, as we have other speakers?
Well, of course you can, but do you want me to continue?
Well, in that case, I'm going to have to cut some of the speakers, but do carry on then.
Yes, because I think I'm talking what is the kernel of this problem. Because my costing was very low at 1.2 billion, I did another costing. There's a document, because the HS2 tunnel, which is going from London to the north, goes to the Chiltern Hills, which are chalk, HS2 produced a document, tunnelling costs in the Chiltern. I used that. I got 1.4 billion. Now, I'm not going to, I have to make a caveat. As you can see, I'm very old, I'm out of touch. So these figures would have to be checked by somebody else. But I guess they'll be somewhere near it. So